Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Alester.
My name is Nicole. Hi.
Yes, and you may not recognize her. Or you may recognize her voice. Today we have Nicole joining us, and she is from, you know what, Nicole? I'm just going to leave it to you to do your own self-introduction.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. You might recognize my face if you are a constant YouTube consumer, content consumer, because we have a YouTube channel now.
Yes.
Watch out, we are competitors. But yes.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I run and produce a podcast called Something Private. We are a podcast that talks about gender, societal identity issues in Singapore. And yeah, you can check out our channel at Something Private. We talk about everything related to like women's health, love, identity. We talk about like hot button issues related to like gender and like society issues essentially.
Yeah. Actually, this is quite a big moment for me. Because I remember when I started IMO and Kezia actually told me about something private.
Yeah.
I remember I was like asking her like, oh, how should I do my Instagram? Then she referred me to you guys. And I remember my whole Instagram strategy / thing is like modeled after their Instagram. and I was like, yeah, that's quite cool. Then I went to, which I don't watch podcasts, okay, guys. We are really enough. But
Funny enough that you say the word watch because podcasts are meant to be listened to.
okay, fine. I don't listen / watch podcasts. So I still went to watch, listen to some of their podcasts. So that was quite cool.
Thank you, flattered. I'm a big fan as well. I just want to
Thank you so
say
much.
I have listened to a couple of episodes. You are very interesting. I think you all cover very interesting topics as well.
Nice.
So yeah.
And today is one of them. Interesting topic, very controversial topic, as you guys can see from the thumbnail. We are going to tread very lightly from here on out. I think because you recognize the gravity of the issue and everything. But we're going to preface everything once again with our tagline: go to conversations ready, have your minds change.
Yes.
And everything will be fine. Just have an intellectual discussion, and all we want to do is try to see how society can improve in different small ways.
Yeah, and at the same time, I recognize that some of these topics will be a little bit, maybe a little bit triggery for people who might be survivors of sexual I always can't do that word.
Misdemeanours.
Sexual misdemeanor.
Yes.
So, fair warning. And at the same time, also, we do encourage you all to come forward in the comments and participate in the conversation, because I think a lot more people need to know your truth, instead of a bunch of people on the internet just talking about it without knowing what actually goes on.
Yes.
That being said, you can follow us also on Instagram. Our socials are down below. We'll actually leave something private. The links are all below, so go and follow her. And we actually have a Telegram chat. If you have not joined us, you can receive more updates over there. And yes, enough waffling. Let's get into it.
So the whole case that inspired this episode is the SMU case. And we have talked about it before, but we haven't really talked about I would say the a bit more pertinent side of this issue. We talked about the public reaction and we have expressed our displeasure for it. So now we want to talk a little bit more about we want to talk a little bit about how to solve it or how to, moving forward, what we can do better as a society.
Yeah.
So, and one of those questions that we have to ask ourselves before we talk about how we want to improve is the whole topic of consent.
Yeah.
It sounds like it will be very easy to understand what consent means, because if you go to dictionary.com, you can find a definition for consent. And I'm quite sure anyone beyond a P2 reading level skill will be able to understand.
I mean, P1, P2 level probably have given consent form to their parents to sign.
Oh my goodness.
That's true.
K1 they probably know already. So you will know what consent means. But I think it gets a little bit more grey when it comes to these issues. And especially when it comes to the law. So, I mean, wait, do you have something to say?
Yes, I was actually going to say, I think this is a great dynamic because I think I mean, coming from somebody who runs a female-related podcast, right? Like, we talk about these kind of issues, like talk about consent, we talk about boundaries, like respect, relationships, but like we don't really talk about it with like members of the opposite sex, which I recognize is very problematic as well, because we can't be just an echo chamber, right? But like, yes, this is wrong, this is bad. Then but we don't
engage with.
Correct. And I mean, we're talking about consent. Consent goes both ways, right? It's not just you ask me for my consent and then like I don't ask you back. I think I wanted to add also that like with the whole idea of consent, yes, we were taught consent when we were young, like the whole idea of the word, but consent in specific scenarios, I don't think is something that was ever brought up as
No,
a child.
never.
No.
Right? For example.
No, actually, funnily enough, I like that you brought up about consent and specific things, because I think everyone's understanding of consent, because having never been put into a situation where the understanding of consent is being questioned, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's understanding of consent is a very consent form kind of understanding. One form covers everything. Right?
Yes.
When you go for excursions, your one consent form covers the entire activity. When actually maybe, I don't know, you cannot swim, right? Or you cannot go into
Correct.
water or that kind of thing. And then those are the different parts that are never technically covered, because they never sort of endanger your being.
Yes. So
And I think also like, sorry, just wanted to
yeah,
interrupt.
go ahead.
Yeah, by all
Like,
means.
you know, when you are young, then the consent form is if you are below 21, is it
21, something like
Yeah,
that.
give your parents.
you give your parents. So
Yeah.
who's asking you for the consent? What if I don't want to go to camp? You know?
Man,
Your parents are like, no.
this is the true problem in
You are
society,
going,
guys.
yes.
At MOE, where you at?
That's the true problem. But I think
Yeah.
what you brought up about like you have one form to cover everything.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
brings very nicely into our first question that we had in our pre-episode talks.
Yeah.
Which is so we are talking about consent, especially in the sexual setting.
Yeah.
So the question that was actually kind of inspired by DJ Jet Russ's Instagram, I think she said something along the lines of like, is consent like a one consent means everything kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or is there one consent for each level of, I guess,
Intimacy,
increasing
or
intimacy?
like
What does it
each
even
act.
mean, right?
Yeah.
What does increasing intimacy even mean
Yeah.
to different people? So I think that, my first reaction when I heard that was that, of course, it should just be one for each level. Let's say I agree to hold hands with you, doesn't mean I agree to have sex with you. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
Yes, but like you brought up something that like kind of went against that. So do you want to share it? Or like
Yeah, and I think I wanted to add first that
Yeah.
like, I mean, this is just to ask everybody
Yeah,
here,
for
I
sure.
guess, because I know that you guys both have like girlfriends, right?
I mean, we don't look like it, but we pretty out there. We're quite cool, okay? People
for some
like
reason,
us.
And I'm the only single one in this room.
You would
People
think
like
you would
us.
think it's the other way around. You would think it's the other way around, but
No,
for some reason.
I mean, her socials are down below. If anyone's interested in having a consented conversation with her, by all means.
Yes.
I wanted to say that I think it's very interesting because you said that like different layers of consent, right? But in the first place, like, what does that look like? Like
Yeah.
when you seek consent, what? And I'm asking myself also, like, does it mean that like let's say like holding hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it mean that like a guy kind of like brush my hand? That's him asking me for consent? Because I can I've been in this space a while. I can
Yeah.
say like, it is not, it's wrong. You must ask me, can I hold your hand? But then when we were growing up, you know, as kids, you learn that if a guy likes you and he wants to hold your hand, he will do it. You know, and then you learn to accept that. You're like, okay, if he wants me, right, he will make the first move and he will go for it.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
But yeah, lor. So like if let's say I consent to you holding my hand, but I don't necessarily consent to you like touching my waist. But the person who has carried out the act sees that as like a consent to move forward. Then like, do I ask you then can I hold your waist, or do I just go for it? You know what I mean? Then
Yes.
that's it's so tricky.
It is.
I don't know.
I think the especially the part about like how does it look?
yeah.
I think it's like it also goes into a second question that we had which is like, is implied consent a thing? Like if you try something and then like, because most of the guys, okay, to be honest with you, I'm not a very confident being. So I think most guys are not very confident either. So most of the time they won't go straight up to your face and like, can I hold your hand? Can I kiss you? They will just kind of like
Try their
Try
luck.
it. Yeah, try their luck.
try their luck a little bit, then like inch, then if they're okay with it, then you just inch closer and then like eventually you lead up to that. But they didn't explicitly ask it. So is that really consent?
So the question is to you, the two of you. How did you
Oh,
make
damn
the
it.
first
I was about to bounce it off the two of you because I don't have the answer.
Okay, frankly speaking, I think this is one of those things that I
gosh.
really have no answer for.
Oh,
Because
my
it
goodness.
is such a complex dynamic. Because you see, right now when we talk about consent, firstly, right, defining the levels of intimacy is really something that we cannot
do it. Yeah,
realistically
everyone has
do.
different levels of intimacy.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And like the thing about it is that we're trying to quantify something that is a very intrinsic emotional experience. You cannot quantify attraction.
yeah.
It's one of those strange things that you cannot necessarily quantify. And if you take the time to quantify, it's something so delicate that if you go and quantify, you may lose it. You know, we're caught in a situation of like quantum mechanics here. You cannot measure it, if not it changes.
Yeah.
Right? Funnily enough, that like I feel that like there still has to be a way to reach a middle ground with this.
Of course.
Because
Yes.
like when you talk about being able to ask whether I can kiss you, whether I can put my hand around your waist, whether I can whatever, right? If the issue is confidence, right, then that can be something that is educated into or out of,
Yes.
right? Which means then that is a quantifiable problem that we can solve,
Okay.
right? For the matter of asking for consent, then if the issue is confidence for men, then very clearly the solution is present.
That means just like make men more.
Actually go
confident.
and teach people how to go and ask for consent.
Yeah.
But okay, the thing about it is that what then constitutes the sort of like you mentioned about implied consent,
Yeah.
right? This is where it comes into a little bit of conflict because it's very hard to quantify things that you imply, and that's why even the whole discussion about tone policing can be a thing because a lot of things don't have to be said but can be implied.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really hard because when you talk about implied consent, I feel everybody's make sense level is very different, like what I
Correct.
mentioned, right?
Correct.
Some people think that hold hand ready means I get to kiss you, right?
That doesn't make any sense to me, but sure.
I'm pretty sure there are people who think that way.
Are there really?
I'm very sure, but that also could be maybe let's say not in a situation where like you hold hand. Let's say like
Yeah.
the first move is he or she put
Yeah.
their arm around your waist.
Yeah.
Then if the person on the receiving end feels uncomfortable, but paiseh to say, or like
Yeah.
how do I not kick up a fuss or like ruin whatever that we have?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
just be nice and like gently let you down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's another big problem about like not asking. If we are going down the route of like not asking, right, then there'll be people that say that like there are a lot of power dynamics most of the time in relationships. Actually, all relationships have power dynamics.
course.
So like it kind of leaves the person with lower power in kind of a bit more like I guess they have their hands tied a little bit.
Yeah.
No, it's
because
true.
they can't say
No, but at the same time, also when we talk about this kind of power dynamic in relationships, right? A lot of times, this is one of those things that is very hard to measure,
yeah.
much less even recognize that it exists.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
so how do we go about fixing this? Because you see, like I mentioned, attraction, especially when it comes to attraction between two people, is something that's really delicate. And that's why this is even an issue, you see. Because when someone is attracted to another person and the other person is potentially attracted back, they will try to push certain boundaries to become a certain level.
Yeah.
And when the pushing is not at a rate that is comfortable, then things become an issue.
Yes.
But how do we fix this when we don't even know, ourselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, the psychologist in me.
Say it.
The psychologist in me has like I guess because we understand that one thing I always believe in is that it's not the way the things only true reality doesn't exist.
Right.
So objective truth never exists.
Right.
It's just how you perceive it. So and that honestly is all that matters. So I can objectively think I asked you, but if you perceive it as I didn't, that's the end. You didn't. That's what I believe. So there are people. So there are let's say someone say like, oh, but I helped you what? But you can honestly think that what the hell you didn't do shit. And in my opinion, there's no such thing as an objective truth. It's just the perceived truth.
Then how then would be the psychologist in you? How would you advise that we navigate this situation?
My advice is you find other people whose perceived truth is the same as yours.
Wow, but it's so hard. How you know what if your perceived truth of their perceived truth is different from
God.
their
It's a spiral. Oh no.
Okay, now let's go back to
Yeah.
the idea of consent. I think it's very tricky, and I think like because we came from a very high profile case where there was a lot of discussion around consent, it's very difficult to say like to then bring it to where we are now and be like, actually like it's simple. Like you should just have open, honest communication, right? But I mean, I always when I'm having discussions around like relationship dynamics and like BGRs and consent and boundaries, I think one very big thing is like how you learn it when you were a child. Like how you were taught like boys and girls should interact, or like how you should make friends, about like how you show interest in like one another. I do think that communication does play a very big part,
Of
and
course.
often is not taught when we were kids.
It's not taught at all, I would
Yep,
say.
yep.
In fact, we learn the most, right, from sources that are not the most qualified.
Correct.
Things like movies, sometimes even from porn and from experiences of people around us.
Correct.
And that has shaped the way that we approach people to the point whereby somehow we have developed this unnecessarily romantic view towards relationship, which
Yes.
most often popular culture will neglect the step of consent.
Yes.
There are popular culture movies out there where the romantic scene involves one character asking like, "Can I kiss you?" or something like that. Those exist, but those are played off in such a way whereby it doesn't feel like the obvious step to take. It feels like a fantastical thing that happens.
That's true. And I think going on to the whole porn thing, like we have mentioned it before, we have talked about sex education before. We said that people's first experience in sex, or like the first thing they learn from sex, is not through schools, it's through porn.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of messed up porns out there. And I think that really ruins the whole, like, I guess, what people's perception of consent is as compared to what it should be. So I think, as what you said, I think to just say, everyone should just like talk about it and have
Correct.
honest communication is like our cop-out way of saying it.
Yeah, and also
If
you're
we-
neglecting like what you're talking about just now, like the experiences of people who experience different like power dynamics in a
Yes.
relationship, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very unfair.
And I mean, we could end this podcast by saying just communicate with your partner. And honestly, we'll be able to like, I mean, most of you won't even bat an eye, but to me, that's not a satisfactory answer.
Yeah.
But it seems like no matter where we go, it's not a satisfactory answer either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think the first step, because this is such a developing issue, right? That people cannot even see the end yet.
Yeah.
People don't even know whether the end exists. We know it exists. We don't know what the end looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So everyone can say that the end is very clear. We need to have like consent, but what does that world look like? We can't even imagine that, right? And that's how new this kind of conversation is. And I think the first step would be then, right, to change the way we approach consent.
Yeah.
Right? We do understand that there's an issue with consent right now, and we do understand that some can be fixed with a proper request.
Yes.
Right? And a request, a confidence enough to make such a request is something that can be taught, right? It's something that can be educated into our people. And I think that should be the first step then that we take. So funnily enough, even though you say that like, the cop-out answer is we ought to talk to each other about it a bit more, right? I feel that is the answer. And the first step to do that is to teach people how to actually have even that conversation. We might be comfortable with having this cop-out answer. I will just from now on ask all partners. We might be comfortable with that, but that does not mean larger society is. Right? And like, Nicole, what you mentioned earlier, right, about what boys and girls are taught differently, right? I feel that in this dynamic as well, girls can be taught that way, because a lot of times I feel that if we draw from some of the experiences, we expect in a very romanticized world that the men are the one be like, can I hold your hand?
Correct.
Can I kiss you?
Correct.
When it should be taught to everyone this first step. Then when we achieve a world that can do this first step, then we see what happens after that. Yeah. And I think that's the first solution that I can think of. It's a very cop-out answer, like you say.
Yeah.
Right? But I think there's something deeper here that can be explored.
Yep. Yep.
It's like how racial and religious harmony is not something that's taught that is not like a given.
Yeah.
Right, but it's drilled into us every single day when we're kids, when we say pledge, when we do racial harmony, it's like basically an education system that tries its best to feed this narrative to you. Right? But right now, we don't have any system that's feeding any narrative besides the movies, the porn, and the friends.
That's true.
And I wanted to add that I think education, when we say like we educate both boys and girls and like every child out there,
Yeah.
or like even ourselves, right? Like what consent is, I think that education kind of empowers people in like different relationship dynamics also to know that like you can express your discomfort and it's valid and that's an option out. Although I know it's very tricky to be like, you can do it, but I know sometimes it's very difficult to take that step.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's tricky lah. But I think that like education leading to empowerment is a very important aspect of like this whole discussion in general.
I totally agree, because can you imagine if, let's say, we go far into the other extreme, where consent becomes top priority of every single conversation, right? And then it becomes like, we even have a chart. what is level 1 consent, what is level 2
Which
consent.
I won't be surprised that will happen
if
in
that
future.
eventually exists, right?
Eventually,
and then that pushes it into the other extreme, right? Where we ask like, can I hold your hand now? Then after that, the school system says you need to wait a minimum 2 days to ask for the next level or something like that, you know? And like you ask already, you have to wait for the girl to ask you back or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the next extreme, right?
Yes.
So like that in itself would be able to fix a lot of issues, but that also I feel will be something that may or may not diminish a certain aspect of the human experience.
Yes, yeah.
Because
that's my reaction.
No, because the thing about the human relationships is that a lot of things are very unspoken and they develop to be so. And some of these things we do recognize that they come with a lot of undesirable baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe you study a lot about this in psychology, right? But at the same time, I feel that like a small part of that exists within humanity for it to exist in the form that we understand and we appreciate. So we can have a very full-on push for that, right? But it may raise other problems, which I think is will come. I'm just saying it as an observation, but I don't think is that big of an issue based on what I can envision. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it also doesn't mean that like if we have like a guidebook for like consent and whatever that you just mentioned, right? It will mean that like, okay, miraculously no cases of harassment and violence would occur, right? I think that's a very naive thing to assume.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. When you said that, for some reason, I thought it was like a little bit dystopian.
It feels a little
It does
in fact,
feel
right,
a
it
little
does
bit
feel
dystopian.
to me like I feel that it was something that might have been possible in an episode of Black Mirror,
Yeah.
right?
Black Mirror, get on this, man.
No, but like at the same time, I do recognize that like you people must understand when in a utopia exists a dystopia.
Yeah.
You know, someone's utopia is another person's dystopia, and we have to recognize that when we do certain things in a certain way, right? We may push towards a utopia, but we will probably create a dystopia for some other people. But right now, what we're trying to do is to find a middle ground that does not step into either territory too much.
Yeah.
Not too dystopic and not too utopic, but we solve the problem at hand.
Yeah.
That's rough, man. It's tough. I think it's tough.
Dystopic. Did I just say dystopic? Dystopian. And no utopian.
Dystopic.
Oh my god.
A lot of big words thrown around tonight.
I don't know.
It's like,
I just keep hearing things and I'm like,
Dystoparinos.
It's very interesting. So, I mean, I can just share also. Like,
Yeah.
we recently did an episode on our platform
Yeah.
that was quite interesting. Basically, the episode was on like subtle forms of harassment that
Right.
we usually ignore. Not saying that we want to ignore like main forms of harassment lah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that there are sometimes quite a lot, exactly like you say, like these grey area situations where maybe I'm not very comfortable with, but I don't really know how to tell the aggressor that like this makes me uncomfortable. And it was very interesting because I think I mentioned one particular incident where, like, looking back now with like the knowledge on like consent, boundaries, respect that I know, I look back on the incident that happened to me in secondary school and felt that I was harassed and I was uncomfortable, and so I spoke about it. So basically the TLDR of the incident was that like there was a senior that was like 4 years my senior. There was a guy 4 years my senior.
Okay. So I'm assuming it's
Sec
Sec
one,
1 and Sec 4.
Sec 1 and Sec 5 actually.
Okay.
Sec 5, yes. So then he was my neighbor.
Right.
And he lived just opposite me. I don't know if you're like, you know, like this, like the block opposite me.
Yeah.
So like he can look into my room.
Oh.
Correct. So I didn't mention this on the podcast, but basically what happened was that like after like getting acquainted with like him, because he had asked like his friend for my number and whatever, he would like sit by his window and basically like stare at me while I'm in my room. Then because my table at that point of time was facing the window, right? So I can see, and he would just like stare at me and look at me, and then a bunch of other things also like would buy me gifts and then tell me like, oh, can you come and meet me? I bought you this and stuff like that. So somebody in the comment mentioned that like, oh, like don't confuse this kind of BGR
like approaches and stuff.
pursuits, right?
Yeah.
As harassment. And said that like I'm conflating it with like other forms of harassment. But that's exactly my point, right? That like I didn't know at that point of time, and therefore I didn't know how to respond. So I told my parents, I was like, oh my god, I'm scared and everything, but they also don't know how to respond. But like, do I go up to him and be like, stop harassing my daughter? Because technically that's not really harassment, it's just showing interest. But it made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I mean it's just very interesting. I think it's just so difficult to say. Like,
Yeah,
it's
even I
so
don't know how to
gray area.
respond to that.
No, yeah,
Correct.
and that's where it gets really grey, you see.
Correct,
and
correct,
then, And then this whole very toxic internet argument about it's harassment when the person is not attractive suddenly starts to come in.
Well, I hate that.
Yeah, and it
Oh,
really
God.
puts, makes this, blah, I can't talk. And it,
You just slap
and it
yourself.
makes this thing like sort of take a step back.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
the whole discussion.
Yep.
It's not productive at all.
Yep.
And I think this is the issue here. Because people tag the reaction to their advances very closely to their attractiveness. Right? And that, as a result of that, right, some people who spread the falsehood, right, either on the receiving end or the pursuing end, right, will warp this very narrative into something that people cannot understand anymore. And this is why I feel that right now, what we need to step away based on something that I was watching recently. I was watching this episode by I cannot remember which episode, but it's talking about romanticism in modern society and
Is it
how
Ellen Burton or something?
I think it's Ellen Burton.
I watched that.
Yeah, I love him.
Casey gave it to me. But
No, but like how romanticism is spoiling this, because you see
Yeah.
people tag their attractiveness to their advancements. It's a very romantic kind of thinking,
yeah.
right? And we are taught romanticism.
Yep. Yep.
Right? How long has Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs been in existence? Forever, right? Cinderella, forever in existence. You know, the characters don't even need to have the prince don't even need to have a real name. And that's the thing, you see. If we continue to have this very romantic view of the world, some of these things will forever not be able to be solved, because there'll be people who are frightened, but there'll be people who also think that, like, don't mistake the advancement as harassment.
Yep,
But
yep,
different people's level of harassment is acceptance of harassment and tolerance is very different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. So I mean, then maybe we can kind of reflect on our own experiences. Is that like?
Yeah, I think it'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I personally, okay, I wouldn't say I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, I try to ask every step. And I think I would like to say that around 80% of the time I've done it. Then 20% of the time is when I'm like a bit sad already. But like 80% of the time is like, most of the time I do ask. And I think partially because I watch a lot of dramas where the way the guy asks the girl to kiss is, can I kiss you?
That's
And
very
I
interesting.
think that's why.
Like K-drama.
I think it's K-dramas. It's K-dramas, man.
Yeah.
It's K-dramas. K-dramas do that a lot. They will ask, they will like straight up ask.
Yeah.
And it's because it's like seen as like manly or seen as
Yeah,
like,
because my impression is that like the manly thing to do is to not ask.
Oh.
Is to just go in for it. And all the dramas that I watch,
it just do.
yeah.
Same.
Oh. Okay, maybe I watch too many K-dramas. I watch too much dots already. But like, like they always like will ask one. They were like,
No, but like
is
the
it okay if I fall in love
I
with
feel
you?
that the prevailing culture is that the two people will look at each other, then they
they
get closer and
know.
closer, and then suddenly they know, and then suddenly slow music, right?
And Subway will play.
Right. You know where I'm going with this. Yeah, and
Yeah, I
and
do.
that's where like I feel that like
Correct.
I don't know how to say it.
Correct.
I don't want to blame the shows per se.
Yeah.
But clearly
Yeah,
the shows are onto something, you know? Why these scenes appear everywhere? Because they work, right? They appeal to a part of humanity that recognizes that, hey, you know, actually it's like that. Or like secretly people like, hey, actually it's like that.
Yeah.
But is it actually no, right? And it doesn't apply to everyone. And it becomes an issue when it doesn't apply to a particular person or particular dynamic.
Do you want to take a camera break before we move on?
Yeah, I was gonna say
the
that.
two
So
of
we'll take
their
a short
experience.
camera break and then we'll go into our experiences with this. And yeah, see you right back.
See you guys.
Alright, guys, and we are back from our camera
We are
break.
back.
We're gonna continue with some stories, our own personal ones.
Why don't you start with yours, John? I already shared mine. How about you? Do you
okay.
ask all the way through?
Okay. Consent, right? You talk about consent and relationship and courtship and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I feel that like I am, because I'm also quite shy as a person. It may not be immediately apparent. Right? But I'm actually quite shy as a person. So a lot of times I was quite lucky because the last two relationships I've had, in fact with people or whatever, right? A lot of times I'm lucky because they are the ones that
Made the first move.
made the first move. Yeah. Even with my current girlfriend. So like very I want to say lucky in that sense because that's what I was seeking. But if we take myself, my being away from it and then we observe it from a third person point of view, right? It feels like a lot of these things, they do it also without necessarily asking for my consent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
They never explicitly asked.
There was no high-pitched voice, may I kiss you? Right? right?
Yeah, sure.
No slow music played, but like we went in for it, and then like in my head I was like, thank God you kissed me. You know, that kind of thing. I don't know how to say.
Yeah.
So this is where I feel that like the experience is very in conflict. A lot of us still have this very romantic view that like, yes, take me. I want to be your partner, you know?
Yeah.
When we ought not to perpetrate or be victims to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in my personal experience, I would say for most of my relationships, there was no, can I kiss you? There was no, can I whatever.
Okay.
There was just we just held hands suddenly. You know, one of us just made the first move and then we just kissed. You know, and I think this is for the greater part of society, this is how it's always been.
Yeah.
Okay. So for you, do you think you had the same experience, kind of?
Yeah, I also feel very conflicted because similarly, I have never asked somebody for consent
Okay.
when I made the first move. But
Yeah.
I think as conventions go and like how we were brought up, right? Typically the guy will make the first move, correct?
Yeah.
And then the girl will be the one that's like, okay, you wait to be approached or like attacked or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But
Attacked.
not attacked, not attacked, approached.
Approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think like in general, like for me, I also generally usually make the first move first. I don't know, maybe this is a cultural thing, but I do think that like it helps to give indication to the guy that like I am interested in you.
No, because actually I realized this, right? When after my partner makes the first move, right? I am more willing to make the second move.
Because you know you won't fail. Lah.
Yeah, and I know I won't like offend anyone.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's fair.
But there also has been a time where the only time that somebody has actually asked me for consent, and I was like, no. I don't know why.
The one time someone asked you for consent,
Yes.
your answer was no.
Yeah, it was specifically to kiss, but also like, I don't know why. I think at the point of time, it was just, I hadn't been very aware about the situation, and I felt that, it was very long ago lah, but I think I felt at the point of time that same law, like, if he wanted to have done it, he would have done it. Yeah, so I recognize that it's a messed up thing in hindsight lah.
So you said no because you thought that he didn't want it enough?
No, I thought that he was very hesitant. Yeah, I think like he was very hesitant about it. So
Okay.
I was like, okay, you kind of, like ruining the moment if you ask.
What even is this moment?
What's the ruining the moment?
No. But
what's the moment, right?
But this is a real thing, you see.
Yeah.
And the fact that it exists in society is a real thing, and this is why I think it
gosh.
can quickly devolve into sexual misdemeanor.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, but I mean, let's say we are bringing it back to that case. That specific case, right?
Yeah.
There were many moments where the victim survivor said no.
No, yes.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think we
Correct
should
lor.
we should just like
Correct.
try to
Correct.
distance ourselves.
So I guess
away from
that's
that. Because we're not talking about that, because I think from the reports, I
Correct.
think it's very clear that she said no.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty clear cut. I think we're just trying to explore a bit more grey area.
Correct.
To
Like
try to
discussing
flesh
consent
out.
in general.
Yeah, and I think the thing about society is that, in order for it to devolve into that kind of situation where people say no, they don't respect, right? It stems from this whole culture in the first place, right? Where people be like, maybe your no is not really a no, or maybe you're just being coy, or maybe you're whatever. And a lot of times these kind of success stories come from people who overcome the being coy person. Right, and then actually secretly, this person also secretly was expecting it.
Chase, right?
Exactly, and I think that this is what is truly the root cause of all this. You know, when you expect that, like, I need to be like hard to get, and then the other side is like, I expect I have to man up and take a hand. You know, it is so deeply rooted in our society that I think it's what is the root cause. It causes these problems as an emergent property of it, because you have these things. Think about it. When we have weddings, right? Why is there even a gate crash? Why is it even called a gate crash?
I have no idea, to be honest.
It's for the guys to basically force their way in, or pay their way in to acquire the bride, right? In a fun manner.
Are you serious?
Is it not?
That sounds messed up. Right out of the gate.
No, but like you think about the
Gate
process
crashing,
of gate crashing, right? The process of, you don't even need to understand, because a lot of people do it without understanding. But You do what the action is. What is the action like, right? You go there, torture yourself, jump in the water, drink disgusting things. Then the bridesmaid bribe the bridesmaid with ang pao. Then okay lah, you can take your wife.
Yeah, correct.
I genuinely have never known that this is a part of
I
weddings.
think this is rooted in the whole, if you really want your wife, you will know all these things and you will take her this way.
It's the TikTok girl in real society.
TikTok
If
girl.
you really want me, right? You'll come and chase me.
And funnily enough, because if you bring up that mothership, that quote,
Yeah.
coming out from the mouths of children, is that
Oh gosh. So
That's
the
come-
problem is that Disney. Is Disney?
No.
It's
I mean,
romanticism.
it's romanticism in our
Yeah, yeah,
society,
yeah, yeah.
and I would say that a lot of this kind of sexual misdemeanor that devolves into that kind of situation where it becomes heinous crimes like rape and molest, right? It's as a result of a society that breeds this romantic view.
Oh gosh.
So
That's
these
kinda
two
true,
things,
though.
these two things, like you talk about utopia and dystopia and how they are both sides of the same coin. I feel the dark side of romanticism is this.
Wow, I really like that you brought up that whole, because the conversation was going to go about the if you really want me, right?
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me that it is perpetuating a certain very potentially toxic
It is.
societal ideal.
Right, because
Yeah.
if we truly overthink, actually, if we overthink a bit, right, if we overthink on the dark side, it can devolve
Yeah.
into that. It's
Because-
not a leap in logic, right?
It's
Correct,
not.
correct.
Yeah.
But if we overthink on the bright side of things, we will see oh my god, the wedding will be like that, and then they get crashed, and then they live happily ever after. Do you follow where I'm going with
So
this?
is this a problem that we want to solve?
So this is a problem that I don't think we should solve in a way of being diagnostic. It has to be a cultural shift kind of solve. So like for example, like what I was saying earlier about coming closer to the middle. The romantic gate crashing kind of thing, all the kind of thing, why is it acceptable? Because these two are consenting couples about to be wed. And
Okay.
that's fine, right? And that's fine to keep
Sure.
some of these traditions.
Yeah.
Right? But these are also discerning adults that have understood that this is not a breach of consent.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this can still be taught. If these are if this is never covered, the overthinking dark side will possibly be somebody becoming a victim of rape. Right? But if we properly teach them and say that, when this happens, it means this, or this happens, it means this. Here's a framework of how you can engage. We slowly come closer to something that fits in the middle, where we reap the fruits and avoid the pitfalls, not because they aren't there, but because we understand that they are there.
That's a good point.
Because right now, right, when we live in a society that feeds you romantic media, that doesn't cover things in an educational manner,
Yeah.
we don't even know they exist. People do great cash without understanding what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
It sounds bad to
Some
me,
people argue certain rape cases in a way, and then there are people that defend them in a way that they don't fully understand what it looks like as well.
Yeah. So you feel like it's like there's no really a way to solve it. It's more of a way to mitigate the downsides that come with such a culture.
I would say the solve that we're looking for,
Yeah.
right, would be to teach people, to move people forward in terms of their mindsets. Teaching away the prominent culture. We used to have a very geocentric thinking, right? Everything revolved around the earth.
Yeah.
It took a long time, despite being discovered that we are heliocentric, to eventually change to the model of planets orbiting around the sun.
Yeah.
And back then, saying that you didn't orbit around the sun was blasphemy. The church will come for you. That kind of solution is not a diagnostic problem. You cannot just solve like, we found that the sun is... No, people will still believe that things... We need to have a cultural shift in understanding. Like, I give you a good example. We can talk about the USA. I think USA is a good example in modern times. There are still COVID deniers.
Which is crazy.
The USA still has the top number of deaths in the world. They still deny some of these numbers are inflated, right? And they still deny that masks and vaccines don't work. How do they shift the narrative? When Joe Biden came in, his priority became the vaccination, became the mask, and then suddenly the numbers come down. You want to deny, you cannot deny. The narrative shifts. So you need someone to provide that kind of solid belief for them to change. It's like witch hunt trials last time, what? Salem witch trials. Didn't shift because people found out witches don't exist. In fact, right now you ask anyone on the street, they probably still don't know whether witches exist or not.
Yeah.
Right? But what shifted was that, hey, maybe burning people on the stake was not a good idea. That was the thing that was taught. That was the solution. And it didn't happen immediately. It probably happened over a span of, 5-10 years. One generation. It is something that we need. But right now, we don't even have this.
We don't.
Yeah, right now we're just like, oh my god, rape happens. Oh my god, gate crash is fine. Without understanding why it's fine, one isn't.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is great. If I can just give us a pat on the shoulder, I think it's great.
I think we solved the problem.
We cracked it, guys. We cracked
We
it.
cracked it, guys. Where's my Nobel Peace Prize? Thank you.
But it's great. I'm glad that we can have these types of conversations because like how else would we move towards that change, right? I think this is...
I don't think there's any realistic way because you think about it, we can talk about solutions all we want, right? But what we need is a realistic solution because if it's not realistic, it's not actionable.
Yep.
Right? And that's the thing. People have this very idealized world like, oh, we found the solution and then the trail ends there. No, right? Solutions need to implement. Solutions still need to make sure enough people adopt.
That's true.
You know? And this is where I think the true struggle comes in. Not everyone has this kind of understanding. And having said all this, not everyone may agree with us. And you know, unfortunately, that's fine. But why I say unfortunately, because with respects to this kind of situation, if we're not united in our way of fixing it, we will never fix it.
I think that's one thing that I've learned from IMO is that like no matter how much you think you're right or the I guess I would like to phrase it as a beauty, but the beauty of the human condition is that no two other people are the same.
Exactly.
And that comes with the problems as well. It's kind of like the romanticism thing. Like it is beautiful that romance is being, I guess, put in forefront.
Romanticized, right?
Yeah, and honestly speaking, it's a good feeling, and being in love is a great feeling, and everything like that. But at the same time, it all comes with like she's laughing at me because she's like, I don't know how that feels, but like, but I'm like,
very rude.
But like, I'm just saying that like, because as much as it comes with good things, it comes with bad things.
Absolutely, everything is the case like that.
Yeah, the duality of life.
We do have to educate people on this, and that is unfortunately the only solution we can have if we want a long-term effect. If we want to have a short-term effect, very simple, right? In fact, everyone's calling for it on the internet. Oh, harsher punishment for rapists, or but it teaches nothing, and it changes nothing. The rape rates or sexual crime rates may decrease because of a deterrence, but you are once again going back to the Asian tiger parent education. You deter without educating.
Yeah.
Why did we it's like Singaporeans, we I feel that as an Asian society in Singapore, we have this kind of problematic mindset without understanding a lot of times. I'll give you an example. You talk about Singapore, and then right now we're having a fourth wave of COVID, right? With the Tan Tock Seng cluster.
Yeah.
Singaporeans are not afraid of COVID. They're afraid of the red shirt. And that's what.
True.
Right?
They're afraid of the lockdown.
They're afraid of the crime, of the punishment. They're afraid of the lockdown. They're not afraid of the disease. And this comes with privilege. But if we don't even teach people that they're privileged, then they won't even know that, oh, okay, maybe it is my social duty that I have to hide in a room because, people are starting to fall like flies. And then you will encounter Singaporean landlords who make the news by rejecting some of these medical staff.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, but that's another episode.
And this is a very I think this is very deeply rooted in our Asian society also.
Yeah, I agree. You're very wise, John.
Hey, thank you.
You're showing your age is 30.
The two younger 20-something-year-olds have been sitting here listening.
They'll be
Yes.
I choose 30.
so
I know, okay, but at the same time, right, whoever is in the comments, please leave your comments because this is just my understanding, right? I just like to have a more moderate view of the world. I don't believe like, one thing correct, one thing wrong. So yeah, please join our Telegram chat and fight with us.
Actually, do you have anything, like any thoughts from whatever we discussed so far?
Like rounding thoughts.
Should we round it up? Or do you want, okay, we can.
I mean, we got lots of time.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
I guess I wanted to go back to the whole idea of like consent. And I don't know if, like some people tuning in might find it like a buzzword nowadays, right? Like talking about like consent and stuff like that. But like what exactly does it mean? I think we never really say, but I think in essence to me what consent is a hard yes, right? Giving consent is a hard yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Denying somebody consent is a hard no.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's just what I wanted to add.
Okay.
In case there was any...
In case not clear. In case not clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, man,
No, but
I think it's
at the
tough,
same
man.
time, I think
the-
one other thing I would like to add on to what Nicole has mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Whereby consent is given, consent is taken. Consent is one of those things that is not like those kids' agreement at the playground. Got take back one. There are
Yes.
backsies, like you say already, and then after that you think you second guess yourself, you don't want, right? You can take back one. And consent is one of those tricky things that you can actually also be pressured into. And that's why I say it's very important that you can take back. Don't just because you say yes just now, suddenly you feel no, and then you don't dare to say. And this is where consent is very important. And same for those people who manage to coerce people, right, to consent. If they come back around and say they don't want, it's time for you to step back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
I think as much as we think that as much as I would like to say that these things are very easily solved, but like I've said this multiple times on IMO, I think these things will probably never be solved within our lifetime, or maybe even 5 times our lifetime. And I think that's fine. I think we just have to lay the foundations down. And I think I don't have the answer to what consent is like in terms of like the hard like definition of it that I can share with everyone right now, and I'm quite sure most people don't either. But I do think everyone understands the spirit of it, and or like if you don't, then maybe that's the problem with the education system. I guess I hope to get to a point where everyone understands the spirit of it, and I think a lot of sexual misdemeanours. Well, I got it right. Sexual misdemeanours can like reduce because of that.
And I think right now the pressing issue is that we want to create a situation where even if we do not have the immediate answer, sex crimes don't increase.
Yes.
You know, and I think this is the crux of the issue here and why it feels so urgent. If we talk about problems that span generations, right?
Yeah.
There will be victims. There will be people, and I think that's the truth we have to acknowledge when we talk about changing this. Their sexual victims will exist. They will happen, right? What we want to achieve is to eventually reach a state where they are as close to zero as possible. And this is something that like can only be possible if we look long term.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I hate to say this, but we have to firstly, I don't want to say disregard the victims, but we have to look at humanity as a whole. If we don't fix this as humanity first, right, we are not buying into a long enough solution. And if we don't buy into a long enough solution, right, real change will never truly happen. So we can always start small to change this culture when we talk about consent. So what consent is, right, is something that you must explicitly ask and it must be explicitly given.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That should be the base level understanding of it. If you never explicitly asked, right, then that is not consent. You must explicitly ask. Even if, unfortunately, I hate to say this, even if it kills the mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what's the mood?
I think the mood is just, as we said, it comes from romanticism.
And okay, you know, we move away from a romantic thought process, right? You ask once, you get a no, you accept that. Maybe tomorrow you can ask politely again.
Yeah.
You know?
Very grey. Yeah, I do think it's very important to also like, I mean, adding on to like just specifically like relationships, right? Like I think you mentioned just now, it's very important to do like regular check-ins. Yeah, lor. I feel like that's very important. And that it goes both ways. I think my takeaway is that I will start asking the people I see for consent. It's important. I practice what I preach.
That's a
I
good
think
step
that's really
to do
important.
actually. Because actually,
Yeah.
funnily enough, you know, like just now we mentioned what, right? If someone is encouraging in that way, I'm more willing to make the second step. Like I'm more willing to match the dynamic and also ask. And I think that is how it all begins.
Yes.
You know, someone's willing to ask for consent and receive back consent. Then the other side, you can sort of have the expectation for them to do back the same. And then this is how we have a thought revolution.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, we have 10 minutes left. Do you want to read comments? Should I read comments?
Sure.
Okay. By we, I mean, they really just mean I will read the comments and
And then we will just laugh.
they'll listen.
Okay. So we got the easy job. Great.
Yes. Okay, so the comments will be from the last SMU case episode we did is public
With
reaction to
Denise,
SMU case
right?
with Brianna.
Oh, with Brianna, yes.
So it's IMO episode 53. I'll be okay. To be honest with you guys, most of you guys have leaving essay long comments and I love it, but I can't read everything out here. So I'm just gonna summarize.
Okay.
My GP summarizing skills is coming into play. So I think Ray Raw said a long time commenter. So he said something along the lines that I'm quite that I thought was quite interesting actually. he said that like in a lot of people who say that it's the girl's fault, some of them are even women, and he said he can never understand why, especially women would say that. So he was saying that it might be possible that he said that like apparently he thinks that the reason might be that they are trying to like distance themselves from the victim as much as possible, and he said that like because I won't ever do this thing won't happen to me. And I thought it was just interesting. I don't know how true it is. I just thought it was an interesting thought process that maybe in some kind of like weird psychological way you can see that being a subconscious reason why someone would be against the I guess the norm or like the societally accepted thing.
So he just to clarify, so he's saying that they are trying to distance themselves from the victim in a way that they see themselves as like purely just different, or
as in terms of like let's say the victim obviously they got sexually assaulted and stuff. Then I think he also brought a few cases like in India. There are many women in India who will say that like she got raped but she went out at night. She deserved it. It's at night. Then they say I think to him it might be a way of like distancing and say that like because I feel unsafe because of this. Then by saying that and saying that I will never go out at night or never do this or never wear skimpy clothing, whatever, you feel distance and you feel like safer. You feel like you are different from the person and therefore it can never happen to you. At least that's what I interpreted it as. I don't know how valid it is. I'll do some research as well. But it at least on the surface it doesn't sound, I guess, there's something to it, I guess. Maybe subconsciously.
I feel like I agree with that sentiment a little bit because that is how people's reactions to drug offences are like. People will be like, I don't take drugs. It will not be like that.
correct.
You see, he's stupid, he take drugs first. I think it is also like what you mentioned, is sort of the way that we try to protect ourselves to show that like we are not like that. You know, not everyone is like that. This guy clearly is the fool. He is not part of our community. We don't claim him or something like that. And I think that's where it gets a little bit problematic. I feel that in situations of any kind of be it sexual or any kind of crime or any kind of issue that comes up with people, right? We should move away from this very instinctive fault-finding attitude that is very inbuilt in us. Because like how I mentioned a few times in some of our episodes, right? So what if we find out who's at fault?
Yeah. So what?
So what? Right? It solves nothing. We don't fix anyone. We don't fix any problem. So what if we find out who's at fault? Or so what if we're quick to say that like, it'll never happen to me because I'm a good person. So what if you are a good person, right? And this is where I feel that like I understand his frustration and I understand his confusion that people are quick to look for victims and look for people to blame and look for people to find fault with. But at the same time, I feel that it's also a very human thing to do, right? And asking people to move away from what is most human to them is very difficult.
I think that definitely, I wouldn't say that that's the only reason. I think there are some other reasons, of course, like that, especially in society, there are certain messages that are being spread around and you sometimes internalize that.
Yep.
That's just how it is.
I actually think it's very interesting that he brought it up.
Yeah.
And I asked for the clarification because I'm wondering if it also is a situation where they think that they are potentially like maybe better than the victims and
like
survivor.
a moral high ground kind of thing.
Correct. That like
Maybe.
they had like an idea of what might have happened, right? Victim blaming, right? Like how did the individual get herself in that situation and how like I would never be in a situation because I don't do this.
Because I don't, exactly.
Moral high ground. But I also think this is a product or result of like, I don't want to be like, everything's a lack of education, but it is a bit of a lack of education. And the fact that like, I think the whole like justice system around sexual assault and violence is very much like you said, like a punishing the perpetrator instead of it being a victim/survivor centric one, which I think is something that like aware, like all these like really amazing women organizations have been pushing for in that when it comes to such cases of violence, the importance of putting victims and survivors care in as the top priority, right, is so that like people will see that it is a very complex situation.
Yeah.
You know, like the perpetrator could be anybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to be wearing a certain kind of thing to be harassed. You know, you
Yeah.
don't have to, like it could be very blur, it could be very grey, it could literally happen to anyone. But I think it's really a lack of awareness and a lack of, I guess, like seeing all the details in situations like these that
Yes.
will lead them to think this way.
Yeah.
And it's because, like you always see like the perpetrator did this, the perpetrator did this. These are the punishments that are being meted out. Blah, 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 blah. But you never think, oh yeah, they were maybe in a relationship even, right? Which is a lot of times what happens to like victims and survivors and their perpetrators, right? They have an existing relationship. So yeah, I think very interesting. Valid.
I don't know how like whether it's research backed or anything, but it'll be cool if it is research backed.
Yeah.
We'll look more into it. The last comment that we were going to highlight is by his name is ANS. I don't know how to pronounce it, but he did say something along the lines of like victim blaming is obviously wrong, but can we agree that we can do our part to take extra precautions to keep ourselves safe? So he said there's really a lot more to this case and said the guy is dumb to give in to his sexual needs and the girl can do better to protect herself. I hope the girl will be able to recover from this and the case can find a proper closure. So I think that's a little bit of the dilemma most of the time when they come to this. Because there are obviously the people who say that like the girl shouldn't have done this, the girl should be more careful, whatever. Then on the flip side, the people who only said the people who are responding to that, like for example, like us would be like, why are you putting the blame on the girl? And it is victim blaming. But then there'll be the people that also who have a little bit more neutral stance, like of course it's the guy's fault, but at the same time, like couldn't the girl have done more? So what do you have to say about that?
I mean, personally, my point of view is I still take a very moderate stance towards this. I do understand that like we want to achieve a world whereby, you know, people can do whatever they want. I'm like, why I cannot do whatever? It's my body or whatever, right? I totally agree with the narrative. Yeah, please, by all means, it's within your right to do whatever you want. In fact, during the conversation with Brianna, I was like saying that how come you know, as a lady, you go to a party expecting to be smashed, you don't expect to get raped, right?
Yeah.
Why can a guy expect that but a woman not, right? So that's my expectation of the world. You know, why is this? But the thing about it is that why I say I take a very moderate stance because danger will exist regardless of how fixed the world is, right? So this whole point of taking precautions for the sake of precaution of safety rather than for the sake of victim blaming is two different things.
I completely agree.
Yeah, it's two very different things. It's like the when you go swimming, please take swimming classes versus like you go swimming, like why you go into the water in the first place? If you never go in the water, you won't drown. That's not right. You know. As compared to like, please go and take more swimming lessons, then you go in the water lah. Please, how can you please do that? That is different. You know, you're warning people against a danger that will, I hate to say this, will forever exist. Right? As compared to telling the victim that they were a victim because of their own faults.
Correct.
Those are very different things.
I agree.
Yeah. I think it's not only problematic. I completely agree, but it is problematic and most of the time problematic because of the way or like the order in which people put it across, right? It's like, but she should have been cautious, full stop. Then the focus is, it was her fault.
Correct.
She asked for it, right?
Yeah.
Compared to like, he or she shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the thing, that's how delicate some of these situations are. Because if you're not able to navigate this properly, right, then it very quickly becomes this person's like, oh, we're blaming you for not taking this right action.
Correct.
And people say like, why must you tell me how to speak? That's how delicate it is, you see. You have to tell people nicely in a way that you address the right audience.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's where the line is lah. And we have said it before on camera as well. I think as long as you're not doing it in a victim blaming way, and of course I don't think you should be going around telling strangers this. I think we said before, if it's like your partner or if it's like next time your daughter or something, if you say it in a nice way, I think that's within your jurisdiction as someone in a relationship with the person. Yeah, I think that's fine. But I don't think you should be going around like Orchard Road and telling
people
girls,
what to do.
yeah, like, hey, why you dress like that kind of thing. Should you protect yourself?
But I also just want to add that like I think sometimes like with the whole victim blaming thing, right? I feel like this is a society thing. Like nobody wants to be like, or nobody will say or admit that I am victim blaming. They will come from a perspective where it's like, I am warning her, I am looking out for her safety. That's why I think that she should put it as a priority. But then the focus is wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah, lor. So I feel like if you say like we shouldn't be victim blame or we shouldn't take a victim blaming approach. It's true, but a lot of times these people who are doing it, they're like, no, but I'm just looking out for her welfare.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. People don't know better.
Correct.
And it's very unfortunate because if people don't know better, then this is the kind of
you have good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they don't understand that what they then need to fix, right, would be to fix the direction of their intentions together with what they say.
Yeah.
Because when these two things don't point in the same direction, it leads to misunderstanding, which is a separate problem. But it's also a problem. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, and is there anything else? Do you guys want to add, like concluding thoughts?
No, Nicole, anything?
No, maybe can I do a plug?
Of course, yes.
Of course, man.
I was about to plug for you anyways, man.
Yeah, I was about to do that.
Yeah, I wanted to say that these are topics that we actually cover a lot on like our own podcast, Something Private, my own podcast, Something Private. I think it's very interesting because we talk a lot about like victim-perpetrator relationships, how oftentimes, most of the time, that dynamic is between people who know one another.
Yes.
What can you do if you are being like harassed, for instance? Like what legal redress you can seek? And I'm not even talking about like somebody touching you on the street, right? That kind of harassment. But even like very common, like somebody sends you a Telegram nude.
Oh,
like what are you gonna do?
all
Like
the time.
Instagram DM that is like completely unsolicited, you know? So I think things like these very subtle kinds of harassment, but are valid harassments as well. Like what can we do? How can we continue to have conversations with one another? What are the like kinds of redress we can have? So I know it sounds a bit dry. It's very interesting. And I think that like it's a question that comes up a lot. Like I keep getting these kind of questions like, oh, what should I do? Like somebody I know got harassed. This happened. Listen to my podcast.
I actually personally on IMO we actually gave them a shout out before about the subtle forms of sexual harassment that we often ignore. I think that's the title. And I actually watched that whole episode, so you guys know that's good. So I think definitely go and go to them because I think they're more of an authority on it than the two of us.
That's not fair. Y'all can be authorities as well.
Thank you so much.
We are authorities.
Men can get harassed as well.
That's
of
true.
course. Yes, but I mean, of course, go and check them out.
Yeah.
I think they are there. They are definitely the inspirations for all of this. So
Yeah, you see where my finger point there lah below.
the description box, guys. And follow them on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. Join our Telegram group. And she'll be back next week for another episode. So
Yeah, man.
You don't
Wearing
have to
the
wait
same
too
clothes
long.
lah because actually we film both at the same time lah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode. Stay safe. Don't get COVID and see you guys next time.
Yeah, wash your hands whenever you can.
Wash your hands, man.
Thank you.
Bye.